Welcome to the You Be the Judge podcast show. My name is Wiri, podcasting from the lovely Asian paradise of Vietnam. I've been researching for over 15 years into various subjects and topics that affect us all in some shape or form. Primarily alternative real news and exotic information. And I always say the truth can set you free, but first it will piss you off. Okay, today's guest on our show is Advanced New Zealand Party Kelston candidate Maureen Kumeroa. Kia ora, Maureen, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Kia ora, Wiri. Thank you for having me on today.
No worries. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your journey, and what you're currently doing?
Yes, so I am a mum of two, a boy and a girl, and currently I am standing for Advanced New Zealand candidate for Kelston. That's one thing that I do. I also wear a couple of hats. So I am a team leader for early childhood service in New Lynn and in West Auckland. And I also am currently studying two subjects in a diploma of applied science, so health science actually, and was hoping to do a pathway to chiropractic, but we'll have to see what happens after the elections.
Wow, awesome. Sounds like a good resume. So what's the current situation with New Zealand in regards to the current crisis situation and the lockdowns?
Yeah, that's a pretty big question there. So New Zealand is completely, I think, is divided. We have got those who have said they've lost everything, and I'm talking about their jobs or particularly, and I think that is everything for some people here in New Zealand. And we also have those who are inundated with fear that they don't want to leave their home. And also what I'm actually currently seeing, particularly in Auckland region, a lot of people wearing masks. So, there's a lot of things that are going on under this crisis of lockdown. And I'm also hearing and seeing that there's small businesses who are suffering and they're going to the wall. So, yeah, it's just a few things.
Okay, awesome. And are you happy with the handling of the crisis situation by the current government?
So I'm not happy at all. Why? Because they have not followed through with themselves, which causes them to be hypocrites. And I'll give them one example, just having selfies with no masks. And while she was down at Massey University, I believe.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I'm like going, hello, here you go, taking a good selfie, no mask, no social distancing, and she's asking us to do the same. So I think that's a bit hypocritical. Well, it is not a bit, it is hypocritical. And so from there, she's encouraging us, the New Zealand public, to wear them when out in a public space, particularly while we're in public transport. What else was there? She also stated that they are the only source of truth, so that their stories, they just do not match. For example, on the COVID-19 website, they wrote about South and West Auckland that they should be tested, and then she retracted it with Mike Hoskins to say that she didn't actually say that publicly, verbally on television. So yeah, those are the few things, and she's blaming website staff, her staff who are maintaining that website for the COVID-19 website.
So what do you think of the current mainstream media in New Zealand, and what do you think about the current media campaign push to ostracize and persecute critical thinkers and label anyone who thinks outside Labour's outdated narrative?
So I've broken that question up into a couple of points. So when it comes to current mainstream media in New Zealand, they're only covering a narrow and instilling fear type narrative. And so to ask your second point, if they're so assured about that their narrative is correct, then they should not have a problem in discussing other points of views. It's quite interesting that the Prime Minister have paid TV News $50 million and the Māori television $30 million as a response to COVID-19. That's what they're saying in media, but I believe otherwise.
Yeah, $50 million seems more like a bribe to me. That's my own opinion anyway. And obviously, if you are the mainstream media, you do not bite the hand that feeds you, so to speak. So I think people should realize that, and who are the mainstream media really backing, and what narrative are they really pushing, and why. I think those are questions that really need to be asked. Anyway, let's get to the next question. What's the election race looking like back in New Zealand at the moment? There's a number of parties there, so give us a bit of an update.
So I went to a debate the other night in Matamata, and our minor parties, it was very interesting. I mean, was in Matamata, so these are those candidates standing for that area. And what was surprising was that how similar they had in their policies and their ideas. So I feel, or I sense, and I've watched that our minor parties are all on the same, have the same, on the same waka is what I will put it as, and they're really concerned about how much democracy is being taken away from the New Zealand public. So the parties that were in debate were Top, One, so Top is the Opportunist Party, One, Advance New Zealand, Māori Party, New Conservatives, Social Credit, and Vision. Yes, a Vision. The election race is quite biased. So the National, they've had a lot to prove to the New Zealand public before they can even get in, or get another chance to get in. Also, there seems to be a lot more awareness that money is going offshore, or has been going offshore, and what I would like to see in this coming election is transparency around the purposes of other countries investing in New Zealand during lockdown and the upcoming election. Jacinda, she's been sprouting her rhetoric content to the public, and for Auckland, and now Auckland is in lockdown at 2.5, only being able to have 10 people that being able to we can speak to or have at an event. So for us here in Auckland, campaigning has been very difficult. We've either have to go online and or go deliver our pamphlets. So campaigning is pretty is not really fair at this point in Auckland in particular.
And I see you're putting in a bit of hard work there with getting up your billboards and things like that. I actually saw a video of you of even some of them trying to deface some of your billboards.
Yeah, and that was really, I had to look at it from a positive perspective, because I could have gone either way. You can't take these things to personally. But what it just highlighted for me is, my frame's still standing, I'm still alive, I'm still a person, I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing right now. And even getting up as an everyday person, I'm a mum, I'm a teacher, to do this, it is quite a step up for what I'm used to doing. And I don't think that I would, I never thought I would ever put myself up there like that. And to see that deframing happening, or the face being cut out, was like, okay, that's someone's perspective. I'm either doing the right things by triggering them and making them feel really uncomfortable, or they like my face. So either way, I can think about it. That's how
That's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the policies that Advance New Zealand has, and what are the ones you are interested in the most, and why?
So the policies that we currently have published is our democracy and COVID-19 response. We are busy and still working on other policies that need to be written, as we are a very new party, I think 100 days running. So we spend quite a significant amount of time of our week talking about policies with all of our candidates, and then they get taken away, written for others. So we're still writing them. So for me personally, what I'm particularly standing for is freedom and democracy. I would prefer that I have the choice to be able to choose, say for instance with vaccinations, if I choose to vaccinate my children or myself, then I will do so. And if that person wants to vaccinate their children, then that should be okay. But if I do not want to, I should have that choice also. Cleaning up New Zealand, so stopping the 1080 and other poison and toxins, banning that stuff. It's not great for our waterways, it's not good for our environment at all. By stopping 1080, we can have our hunters go back out into the bush if that's what they choose to do, and hunt freely without thinking they're getting toxic animals, and that they could be a contribution for helping our
ecosystem
and the pest control.
Yes, I mean, I see some hunters can go out and get possums, and then they can make, possum clothing and all sorts of different things.
And it's amazing process. If you don't have the right equipment and you can do it yourself, it's a long process. But what comes from it afterwards is absolutely beautiful. If that's what you'd like to do. But what's happening for me, or what I'm seeing and witnessing, is that we are slowly losing our rights as a person. And if you don't know your rights, then you don't have them. And I've witnessed and experienced a different New Zealand, particularly since I've come back from overseas in 2009. And I just see that it's been extremely hard for me as a person to get ahead. And or there's just too many laws and regulations and rules that have been mandated that keeps me suppressed with questioning or having another solution to help me get ahead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like me when I come back to New Zealand. Like, I try and come back for like a month or 2 months from Vietnam, and when I get back there, I'm driving my car, and then about a week later, I've got like a fine. So there's all these regulations that have been imposed. I'm like, what? Oh, because you went from like one lane into a service lane to go right. You shouldn't have gone on the service lane. So we're going to fine you like $40 or whatever. I'm like, what? So it's ridiculous.
Now what they're doing is there's zero tolerance. If you go over 1K, it's a fine. 1K. I used to have a 10K.
It's crazy.
Or maybe a 5K
yeah.
Way. Not anymore. So I question that, why they do, what's happening to our New Zealand. I did not grow up in a country. It was a lot more freedom. I remember going out when I lived out in the Waikato region, that I could go, picking fruit trees and just without any consequence to my act, to what we were doing.
What's next? No garden in the front lawn and you'll get a fine or something like that? I mean, it's going to get ridiculous like that if they keep it up.
And just one other point there too, I went back to university as an adult student, raising a family and with the children's father at the time. And it was a struggle financially for me to go back to university. And this is what I was thinking at the time. I said, here I am, I'm contributing to society through education, and this is what I repay. It's something that I'm really passionate about with tertiary education, that we give. I mean, they give you a year off, a year's free fee, but that's only if you haven't been to university.
Right.
And I didn't have that opportunity then. So, now I'm lumped with this big bill, this big loan, and in Teachers College back in a very long time ago, they used to be, they gave teachers bonds and scholarships to go back to teaching. And I know that it is around now, but there's only, I think, 20 people can apply for that all throughout of New Zealand. So, and it is specific to Māori and Pacifica. And I am all for Māori and Pacifica to be educated.
Yeah.
That's not my issue, but 20 out of how many in our population?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I just found it a real challenge. And yeah, and I just appear it's not going to change anymore. So that's why I like these policies of what Advanced New Zealand are promoting.
That's really good, and I hope to see some really good policies eventuate from Advanced New Zealand, and especially around education. I think it's really important we actually get our people to think critically about relevant information that's up to date with the current information and technologies of today. So it'll be awesome to see that. Okay, so what are the current main issues you are concerned with back in New Zealand at the present moment?
Losing our rights completely, full stop. But the threat of mandatory vaccinations and testing for COVID-19. The law changes overnight. That's a concern without any consultation to the public, to me as a citizen and tangata whenua of Aotearoa. One big bill I have really surprised. I think that's a really underestimated comment, but the abortion bill, that's really put me into question about where our country is going at either at 20 weeks or that you can have an abortion either under 20 weeks or over 20 weeks. So there's two different processes, but they sort of merge into the same if you sit down and read the bill. And I just think it's the really cruelest bill that's been passed down during lockdown. Now, it was passed during lockdown. That's what very important to say. It wasn't introduced. It was introduced earlier on, yes, but it was passed. So,
kind of like a sleight of hand thing. So
yeah,
while the left hand's focused on that, the right hand's doing
correct.
something else.
While we're sitting in lockdown, we're worried about if we're going to get COVID-19, or I like how they call it COVID-19 now, not coronavirus. But we're in lockdown and we're going, okay, let's focus on staying indoors, wearing masks when we go inside, sanitizing, etc. And then they go past this bill that's superseded, and as actually the abortion bill is superseded by the COVID-19. So, yeah, very interesting.
Okay, so what are the perceptions like of the people in New Zealand at the moment in regards to the issues you are concerned with, and what is the New Zealand public thinking?
I think we are divided. So there are some saying Jacinda is wonderful. She saved us from this COVID-19. She's keeping us safe and isolated at the same time away from the COVID-19 and coronavirus. And then there's others saying that they have no idea what she's doing and that she's signed our rights away. So, yeah, that's all I can say on that one.
So it seems like some people are still following the sheep mentality, I would say. And I see a lot that are becoming self-appointed guardians of the status quo, complying in fear without question. And I think once you comply in fear without question, I give it a name, and it's called robotic compliance. So you robotically comply. So even if you're a policeman, you will robotically comply. You will do that order. If the order is to go out and arrest people who are free speaking and doing protests, you go and arrest them and you jail them up. And then at the end of the day, you go home, you sit next to your kids, have dinner, you cuddle them, and you say to them, you've done a good job. So that's the robotic compliance that is in some of our people, especially some of the officials out there.
And I'll just give you an example there. I went out campaigning to my electorate, and no disrespect, they're beautiful people, got lovely hearts, but they actually are very unaware of what is going on. They are very, as you would call it, asleep. And, when I posed a question, are they concerned about what's going on today with around in New Zealand? And I'm like, no, as I said, just helping us. And that they were like, we're free, we've got lots of freedom. They actually think that they have lots of freedom right now and are not aware of how much it's slowly closing in the freedom aspect, and it's going more into a mandatory type way of living.
I call it the fishbowl mentality. A fish thinks that it's free within its fishbowl, not realizing there's a unlimited universe or ocean out there. And so I think people's perceptions are very narrow at the moment. It's not until new information comes in do their perceptions open up. And I go back to the analogy I always use with the Matrix, that you got the red pill, you got the blue pill. So when you take the red pill, you actually start awakening, which means your perceptions start opening up. You see more information, because I think the human body is like a transmitter receiver. So once we receive more information, our perceptions open up. And I think once people's perceptions open up, then people want to move with that consciousness that's actually moving in the direction that they want to move in, which is the awakening. And I go into that in a few of my other podcasts about this awakening that's happening quite rampantly now. But also you've got some of the people that are still not with the program or not with the awakening at the moment, still taking the blue pill, still loving it. And yeah, it's something that needs to be worked on. I always say, let's just lay the seeds for the awakening. You can only take the horse to the water, you can't let it drink the water. So it's really up to them. But it doesn't stop us from what we're doing, doesn't stop me from me doing these podcasts, doesn't stop you from doing your advocation for advanced New Zealand Party. So we just keep doing what we're doing, and just hopefully we can just keep waking people up bit by bit.
Yes, that is part of my campaign. It is not enforcing or throwing them in or saying you need to do this. It's not that about it. Is planting those seeds. It's really, really important, especially if they've never heard it before, because it can be quite confronting. Also for some people, and they go, I didn't really realize. I've had a dozen of friends say to me, a month ago or 6 weeks ago, I was all for Jacinda and I have woken up. And I was like, yay, this is great. But 6 weeks ago, they were all for Jacinda.
Yes.
That was the big highlight. I was like, wow, they thought she was doing us a favour. And I can even say for me, prior to learning with what Billy Te Kahika has been talking about through his campaigning, and even before, I was complying to the COVID lockdown in April and March, because I worked in an early childhood centre. I was being that citizen that was, yes, I'm going to obey and abide, because this is the right thing to do. No, and it's not that I wasn't awake before. I just went back to sleep for a little bit, and then realised once I started listening to Billy and what he was saying, and that was through the interview with Pete, the chef Pete Evans. I went, okay, this man has been talking what I've been believing for a long, long time, say 12 years, and I haven't, and because I didn't feel there was enough people around to support my ideas and ideologies, I went, okay, I'll go back to sleep again.
I know. I was the same really too. Hard. I know what I know how you feel, because that happened to me too. It's like, well, is anyone else awake here? Okay. What would you like to see as the ultimate outcome from all of this?
A reset in the government that consists of transparency and accountability, particularly of our government bills, such as the abortion and the COVID-19 that was passed in 3 days, and one whilst we were in lockdown, to stop and ban 1080 and any other poisonous toxins actually being manufactured here in New Zealand, and the import of those toxins coming into our country. To revise all parliamentary bills whatsoever, having a team of a commission, a People's Commission team of experts going in, breaking it down and going, okay, this is not okay or fraudulent, or this is working for the people. And to no longer, I haven't talked about it a lot in this podcast, but is to no longer be under the UN, because we have a document called the Titiriti or Waitangi that responds to not only tangata whenua but all people who reside in New Zealand. And for those who don't know about Agenda 21, this book here, I don't know if you can see it behind the green mask. This is probably a really good start. She gives a real simplified, it's a really short read. She has lots of podcasts on, YouTube's on her, on YouTube videos, sorry. And so, yeah, that's something that I would like to see now. So when 17th of October comes around, please vote for the party vote for Advance New Zealand, because that's what's going to help us get into Parliament, do what I've just said before, which is reset the government, so we can have that transparency to the people and for the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today, Maureen, and for your contributions to society. I wish you all the best for the rest of your journey and the election race, and I'm sure you guys are going to do really well. And I always say, have a great life and not just a great day. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.